A really special council meeting on Thursday, January 29th. Over, please.
Councilmember Sanchez,
Present.
Vice Mayor Johnson,
Here.
Councilmember Calderon.
Yeah. Community participation forum. Members of the public may address the city council on matters not listed on the agenda. The city council may not discuss or take action on any community participation item brought forward by a member of the community. Comments are requested to be limited to 3 minutes. Do you have any speaker cards or anything?
No speaker cards, right?
Anybody in the audience either, so we'll move on to items for consideration, memorandum of understanding, the IBEW.
Thank you for attending the special meeting, Vice Mayor and council members. Before you have the consideration for approval of resolution number 2026 R-02. And it's the resolution that accepts the new memorandum of understanding between the city and the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local Union 1245, by the adoption of the resolution. Just some highlights. The city has been in negotiations with IBEW. We've also had a wage summary that the city used as a tool to reach its designated contract recommendations for reviewing of salaries across clerical staff, electrical staff, and public works departments. We have been engaging in a series of collaborative discussions with review of the third-party wage findings. We discussed the methodology and options. And also I wanted to mention, as we were doing that, we were also bringing to you in closed session updates of the contracts and negotiations. So through these negotiations, the proposed wage and classification adjustments are aligned based on the recommendations that we found in the study. The recommendation, just as an overview, the wages for the electrical classifications increases. The wage summary is for effective July 1 of 2025, 5%, effective July 1, 2026, 5%, effective July 2027, 5%. So that's a three-year contract with IBEW for electrical classifications at 5%, 5%, and then 2% on the third year. Public works clerical classifications, and those were reviewed as well. And based on the wage studies, the city recommended 3% effective July 1, 2025, 0 and 0 for the remainder of the 2 years of the contract. There were some additional changes to the contract, one of them being an increase to the gym membership from $25 to $50. There were some additional changes to that. And then also discussions were held. We are still considering looking at all the departments and working with IBEW to align what's called a class study. We did a wage study this time, which basically we used all of the cities in our local surroundings for public works and clerical staffing as a comparison. And then for electrical, we used what's called 10 cities, where we compared electrical classifications with other cities that held electrical positions such as linemen. So I think it was a very successful agreement. We also need to consider the impacts, the fiscal impacts to this agreement. The total cost of the negotiated wage adjustments were reviewed. We had finance validate those costs for the packages upon myself meeting with the negotiating teams. We would also meet with our finance, and then finance was also brought into negotiation sessions closer to the end of the term. And then also the overall contract projected to increase and it's gonna affect the budget would be $179,213.09 for 3 years. We had already incorporated as an estimate in our current budget of 3%, in the fiscal year, 25-26. However, an adjustment will need to be made to budget for the differences in the electrical contract, which are increasing by 5, not 3, based on the outstanding outcome of the negotiations. Also, the city should review funding strategies and support the long-term sustainability of enterprise and general funds associated with operational and capital needs. And just as by way of review, the electrical classifications come strictly out of electrical fund, which is an enterprise fund. But you have your public works and your clerical that are allocated across funds, simply based on the type of work that they're doing and the nature of it. Majority of the, so both the general fund and the enterprise funds are affected by both of these, because there is a little bit of general fund that comes out of the streets and the public works departments. And I think there's a very minimal allocation that comes out of clerical for that. So just so that you're aware of how we allocate those. The other thing I wanted to mention is we did have our human resource manager review the MOU draft language. And then we checked with applicable labor laws. We took serious the wage adjustment methodology because the wage adjustment provided it in 2 differences. We have a package a comparison where it compares the wages across other cities, but it also does it by salary versus full package benefits. So in some cases, you could have a position that is underpaid, but because we have a good health benefit, then the overall wage study indicated that they were not underpaid, they were at market. So those were also taken into consideration. Again, the wage studies were used as a tool. That was the purpose of using those. And then also I wanted to mention, it's a 3-year contract. It includes the new salary schedule with changes, with the prior agreement being the other issue was the electrical meter certification. We do have linemen, and I wanted to just reiterate, our linemen are unique in the sense that they are not just line. They have an array of other things that they work on that if you compare them to a PG&E worker, it's not the same in the sense that in some areas they're more narrow. So you may have an electrical meterman and you may have a line worker. In our case, some of our linemen are also doing the metering work. And it's not just reading meters. This is specifically programming meters going out, and they're called 3-phase meters. They actually have to receive a certificate for that. They have to go and attend training for that and keep up the training certificate as well. So part of the agreement was the electrical meter certification. We ensured that that was also part of their package. There was an increase to that. It was a minimal increase from $350 to $800 for doing the work. And then it's based on those that are assigned to do the work will be receiving $800 versus those that are holding the certificate is $350. If there happens to be a reason for that person to step out, they're on vacation, then it gets the assignment switches over to another certificate holder, then they would get the $800 for that month. So there's a person that's initially assigned to it, but for coverages, we have to switch it out and assign others as we move forward. The other change was the funeral leave. The funeral leave was outlined 3 days of paid funeral leave, and we wanted to align it with they can take up to 5 days, which is in accordance with state law. So we wanted to align that as well. Those were some of the changes that we noted. And then again, I had already mentioned the gym membership went from 25 to 50. But overall, it was a successful agreement. We do have Martin in the room if there's any questions about budgeting and his discussion on what he would recommend. I would like to also point out that we do have an amended draft that we're going to be receiving quite here soon. We have the,
Really soon, probably.
yeah, right now. We have those for your review. And so I wanted to mention the only changes to this draft from the one that you have before you. There were some formatting changes, some spelling errors, and then there was a section in there for the term of the contract that needed to be amended, which was page 30. We needed to update that. And there's some highlights in here of language that we did as a cleanup. So you have before you what's called a red line. It shows any of the changes or highlights. The ones that were highlighted were just language that we wanted to make sure was looked at just now, and we forgot to unhighlight that. But this is the final draft with upon further review by IBEW. We're going to be working with them closely to review it and make sure we didn't leave anything out. The changes that should come after their review would be mostly formatting. The changes that we don't anticipate any major language changes or additions to it. If there is anything major, we will have our attorney make a decision on whether or not we need to bring it back for an amendment to you. At this time, the reason why we had this special meeting, just to highlight, if you notice, part of the agreement was for it to begin July 1, which causes a retro agreement for a retro pay. The deadline for W-2s is Saturday. So we've been working through calculations of all the retros. We'd like to have those prepared and in time so that we can get the W-2s out. So we don't have to send out amended W-2s to the entire staff. So that was the purpose of holding the special meeting, was to meet those guidelines for the taxing. Again, if there's any major changes, we'll notify you.
Have you ever had
Recommendation at this point.
disciplinary procedures effective?
Pardon?
Have you ever had any disciplinary procedures effective in the city with electric department?
Oh, have we ever had any disciplinary?
Any such incidents?
Are you asking for recently or?
No, just in general.
No, and I think usually if it's disciplinary, it would be taken through the city and the HR, which is confidential. So that's not something that I think would be open for discussion
That's correct.
at this point because it's confidential.
And we have you were going to say something?
Yes.
Recommendation at this point, given that there's highlights on the document and
Well, the highlights were just not real. Yeah.
is probably to finalize the draft with IBEW before we put this to a vote for adoption, just to make sure we don't have an issue with adoption. If the city needs to make paychecks in the meantime, if those eventually become overpays because this MOU is not ultimately adopted, then, the city will have to recoup that money. But that that would be my recommendation at this point.
So we will have, we could set up another, special meeting for Monday then?
We can simply, well, if they can get the document in order, we can agendize this for Monday night. Yeah.
Yeah, this- No,
Doesn't have to
no,
be.
because you're authorizing us to move forward with the retros. Based on the agreement that we brought over for in closed session for the summaries of the agreement. For the wages. And then the document, there's some errors, typographical errors and spelling grammar that we need to look at. And then we need to confirm that with IBW. So we have a working document open with them. And and then we can agendize that for a future date for you on the final draft.
Okay,
So this is just the draft that's before you.
okay, so this is just a draft, so we can move forward with this resolution today?
I would
No.
say no.
Okay, okay,
The only direction that we would ask for is to move forward with the retro wages agreed upon that were mentioned in the staff report before you, which was the electric classifications for July 1, 2025, 5%. And then public works and clerical classifications, 3% for this fiscal year.
okay, you need a resolution on that or just a?
Just a
No.
motion.
I would make the motion and I would ask for an additional motion that the council finds an emergency to add that action item for the purposes of meeting the deadline for W-2 issuance to employees, knowing that the MOU is ultimately and necessarily going to require back pay during the 2025 calendar year.
So I would like to motion if I can, what our administrator and our attorney has just put forward. That
Okay.
would be my motion. Make things easy.
I second that.
Roll call, please.
Vice Mayor Johnson.
Yes.
Councilmember Sanchez.
Yes.
Councilmember Calderon.
Yes.
Okay,
Okay.
so
Perfect. That's
Good.
that's what I needed. Yes.
Okay. So there is no closed session and we will adjourn to our regular meeting on February 2nd.
You just forgot to